the interrogation, when they were asking me questions like, did I enjoy sex? Was this the first time I had sex? Did I use protection? I mean, like, I was getting
They
raped.
ask you such questions.
Yeah,
These are the cops.
Yeah, these are the cops. They asked me, did I use protection? Can I show Hore? The weird thing the police officer said, maybe let's hope you get pregnant, then you have a DNA sample of the child that will prove that this guy is your rapist.
This is the Hustler's Corner.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Hustler's Corner. I'm very excited, guys, that now our episodes come out Monday, 12 o'clock, Wednesday, 12 o'clock, and Fridays, 12 o'clock. I told you guys this year I'm putting in work, and as we had planned that sometime around mid-2022, we will be putting out 3 episodes a week. And then by the end of this year, I promise you guys, we'll be putting out episodes every day. I'm very excited today because the person I'm interviewing is a game changer. Is somebody who is not only an entrepreneur, but somebody who's not afraid to speak their mind, somebody who believes in themselves, and they put in work. The last time I spoke to Jackie, I think she was on book number 3 or number 4, if not number 5. Today she tells me she's got 9 books, guys, 9 books, including this one. This one came out yesterday. It's called Bear 4. They were told to never speak, now they have to. The sex campaigns against the most powerful loaders, breaking down the minds of politicians, shattering the system, by award-winning best-selling author Jackie Phamotse. For those who don't know who Jackie Phamotse is, she's a writer, an author, businesswoman, a social activist, and a philanthropist. Her debut novel, Bear 1, The Blesser's Game, was published in 2017 and was awarded the African Icon Literary Award in Lagos, Nigeria in 2018. A second book titled I Tweet What I Like was inspired by the late struggle icon Steve Biko, I Write What I Like. Her second novel, Bear 2, The Cradle of the Hockey Club, was released in June 2019. Jackie won the SA Book Awards 2020 for Best Fiction for her novel Bear 2, The Cradle of the Hockey Club. The awards are powered by Nielsen Book and SAP.net. Jackie also went on to be listed by Google as one of the most searched personalities in South Africa in 2020. She has also won an award for her social activism at the Women of Wonder Awards ceremony in 2020. She is also listed as one of the most influential educators in 2020 by the Generational Wealth Foundation. Her work revolves around the narrative of women and children in Africa. Her stories are raw, well-researched, and extremely thought-provoking. Jackie's main objective is to create awareness and find long-term objective to create awareness and find long-term solutions to eradicate social ills. But in her books are aimed at educating and empowering people to make better life choices, especially with the fast-growing rate of femicide, rape, and many other social ills. Her work encompasses creating awareness around rape culture, mental illness, and human trafficking. She currently lives in Sandton in Johannesburg, and she is with us today with her brand new latest book, which came out yesterday. Congratulations and welcome, Jackie Phamotse, to the Hustler's Corner. How are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Good to see you.
How are you?
Yo, what an amazing introduction. You've been working.
I have 9 books to date, 3 children's books, 5 adult books, including a non-fiction social media law handbook. So it's been a lot.
Yeah.
But fun. But so fun because I didn't start off like as a writer. I started off doing in the fashion industry, modeling, doing promos. That was a while ago, 2009, 10. And then later on in life, you know, when you go through things and depression hits and you go back to your little corner and you just think and you look at your life and you introspect and ask yourself, what is it that I'm really doing? And then I sat in my corner and I started writing. And obviously the first book was never meant to come out. I wrote it as a diary, actually, which is Bear the Blesser's Game. Before I knew it, my psychologist said to me, well, you've been writing stuff in your laptop, can I read it? And I was very reluctant to show her what I was writing. And then she stole it at some point because I was sleeping in her office, and she looked at my laptop and she said, wow, I think this can be something. Do something about it. And then I published Where the Blessers Game. But obviously there's a backstory to that as well.
Yeah. When I read here your introduction, it says your books were fiction. I didn't know.
I wrote it as fiction.
Okay.
Yes, because in South Africa and many other countries, when you omit certain things from your life story, it cannot be a biography. So how they classify it would be under fiction stories based on a true story, right? So, and the reason why I also did that, it was because there were so many people involved in my story that I felt like some of them didn't deserve to be mentioned by name. Some of them legally would sue me because the stories are very graphic. Other people would even say controversial. Other people would say, well, I didn't give you permission to write about me in your story. So there's a lot of legalities that come with writing. So we opt for going into categories like fiction to keep it as private, and also to protect the other people that we feel, man, people like children. There are children that I mentioned in there. You're like, I actually don't want to expose this child's name before they can give written consent for their stories. So I opted to write my story as fiction. But then obviously there are parts where you're like, oh, okay, I can see this happening. I was there with her when it happened. There are people who were in my space at the time when I wrote the book, so they know exactly what had happened at the time. But just for legal purposes, I had to change names. I had to change physical addresses where people were living. Also to protect myself from a lot of legal implications as well.
Maybe let's go back to where your story started. Who is Jackie Phamotse?
I was born in Baragwana.
How? You from here?
Yes.
Oh.
I was born in Baragwana. We used to stay Komfolo.
For some reason, I thought you from either the Northwest or Limpopo. I don't know why.
It's because, you know, when you're in Johannesburg, you speak so many languages.
Yeah.
And some people get used to you speaking one language and others get used to you speaking the other language. So at some point, they even said I'm Xhosa. Maybe it's because I'm so robust. But you know, I was born in Baragwana in 1988. Stayed Komofolo for about 2-3 years. Then we moved to Western area. Western area, moved to Mpumalanga. So I moved a lot in my life. Like my dad was in the army, so he was never, number one, he was never home. And also because of his work, we had to move places a lot. So we would move from Western area to Secunda, which is in Balentle. Then at some point we lived in Witbank, then came back to Johannesburg again, and then we lived in Krugersdorp, came back to Western area again. So I've lived in most places. So mostly Free State, Johannesburg, KZN, and Eastern Cape. So I've lived everywhere. So you might say, yeah, I'm multilingual.
So you're a proper rainbow South African.
Yeah, I'm a proper 100% South African. So I then, while I was in Western area, I went to school, large school, Glen Harvey, which is an Afrikaans school. Then went to a boarding school in the Free State, which is Low Vepenar. Oh, that school. I was traumatized. I think it was also culture shock. You know, when you live in a mining town, it's not like Kukasi. Kukasi, I mean, Bosoweto, Tembisa. You know, you live with Afrikaans people who are extremely racist. And you experience the racism firsthand from things like the schooling system, where you can't speak your own language in the school at the time. So this is now 1996, 99, 2000, 2001, all the way to 2005. It was very difficult to express our Africanism in the school. So living like that, and then getting to being moved from a school where you speak Afrikaans from grade 1, in fact from grade 0 to grade 7, and then you go to a boarding school where now it's almost like an English convent, where now you transition from Afrikaans to pure English. That was hard because I was speaking Afrikaans all my life. And there was a time where I couldn't even speak Sesotho. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is so bad. Now I'm going to a place where go bulela Sesotho or go bua Sesotho in the Free State. And then you've got the border, Eastern Cape, where it's Xhosa people. that are now in the school with us, and I'm like, oh my goodness, I do not know my culture at all. It has completely been erased from my understanding. And also this is why I feel like my dad was also part of a huge culture shock for me as well, because my dad, in his military service, he would speak many other languages: Swahili, French, Portuguese. And when he comes home, it's difficult for him to understand where we are in terms of languages, right? So I would speak Afrikaans, and he would be like, who taught you that?
So you can't Afrikaans praat?
Yeah, I can. Prachtig Afrikaans
okay.
praat. Yeah, so it would be my mom who instills Sesotho in us, to say, okay, le Basotho, your roots are in Lesotho because your grandmother, your grandparents, bo Rakgadi ntse ba le Lesotho, ba bang ba Free State. And then we do have other people who left Lesotho to go live in Botswana. That's why Setswana, I pick up Setswana from there. So now moving from an Afrikaans school going to an English school, that is hard. And then obviously you meet the other people from different races, and you're like, oh, there's Xhosa people, there's Pedi people, there's Zulu people, and you're like, okay, how do I now fit into this space? So that's where you see the bullying happening, the almost the culture shock, identity issues. Are you even good enough to be in the school? Can you, even the teachers themselves find it hard to educate you because they teach in English and you were taught in Afrikaans. Something as simple as reading, you have to start from scratch. Yes, in primary we were taught English, but it was not as at a level where Afrikaans was pressed on us. So you have to catch up on that in high school. So I experienced a lot of bullying, but I think I was a bit level-headed because I never took it to heart. I was strong enough because of my dad as well, because my dad unare sharp. So I knew how to almost shield myself. Okay, bana ba bang ba etsa so I cannot khala, for example, because you know when you come from an Afrikaans school, you dress a certain way. La para di burra clothes in ladies, the Spice Girls.
Yeah,
those
yeah.
heavy. It was the
Get hope.
yes,
The platform.
the platform.
Yeah.
How fihla in a different school, the All Star, for example, and you're like, did it Chuck King? The All Star is Chuck Taylor,
Chuck Taylor.
but there was also Dickies as well.
Yeah.
So you're like, oh, even the dress code is different here. And you try to find yourself in those people because they are black people, but you like, I want to be like you, but I'm actually really not, you know? So even the way I spoke at the time was problematic because they would pick on my accent and say, oh, well, you actually don't really speak English that well. When we are doing presentations or essays or you're reading out something in school, they would pick on that. And I would force myself to learn how they do things over time. Then, matric, great year, but the worst happened in matric.
What happened?
Oh, man. So matric...
What did you do in matric?
In the Free State.
So this is in the Free State?
Yes.
Okay.
Right?
So you're a teenager then?
So I was a teenager. So matric have not experienced life as other people because we are in a boarding school. So you can't really socialize. You're still in the confines of the school. You can't really do much. So in Free State, we had what we call winter school, where you are almost initiated into varsity. They teach you for like 2-3 weeks during the June-July holidays and show you different career paths to choose after matric, and they sort of initiate you and say, okay, you can choose that school, that university in the Free State area, and so forth. So we had decided to go to Bloemfontein from Wepener to Bloemfontein, which is about an hour, 30 minutes drive.
Yeah.
For 2 weeks. And then one night, one of my friends said, dude, you don't go out, you don't socialize, you only play sports, and it's schoolwork, man. You're a typical student. Let's go show you
Bophelo.
you know,
Yeah.
And we went to a club called Whispers. And I don't know if it still exists, but in 2018, it did exist, but under different management. We went to that club, and I remember you know, how like these long dresses. And I remember my friend saying, "Oh yeah, guy comes to order, so you can't dress like that. People don't dress like that in clubs."
Yeah.
And I was so confused.
And it was your first time in a club?
It was my first time in the club. So she said, can you stapler, go back a stapler nicely so that it's a mini little dress. So we are in the flat and she's doing the dress and I'm very nervous. There were no makeup and stuff at that time. There was a powder, baby powder or a lip gloss, and then you're out. Got to the club, shock. You see these strippers, you see alcohol, different kinds of alcohol.
Club.
Yeah, it was more of a strip club.
Whispers, yeah, you can hear
Whispers,
man, the name.
Hey, it's what I was saying this so.
It's okay. I've been to the Grand, but I've never been to Summit.
Exactly. So, no, the Grand is posh.
Oh, okay.
That was not posh.
Okay.
So, got in. There's a table arrangement, then khonale, sort of a stage where there's pole dancing and that type of stuff, you know? So we're sitting by the bar and we start ordering drinks. At that time, it was Southern Comfort.
Okay.
Yeah, it was Southern Comfort. It's either you were drinking that or Bacardi.
So that was your introduction into...
To alcohol. So they order Southern Comfort. I'm like, what are we supposed to do? Like, I just mix a coke. Mix a coke. And we started drinking that. I think 2 hours into the whole night, you know, girls, you feel pressed and you want to go to the bathroom. And I went to the bathroom. There was a long queue. And got there and I said, nah, I'm not going to survive. I need the bathroom now. I can't wait for 10, 15 other girls to go into the cubicles before, you know. So there was a lady who was serving us at the bar area. A black lady. I think at the time she looked early 30s. She looked very young. And I thought I could trust her. I said to her, I need the bathroom. Can you assist me? She said, yeah, I can assist you. There's an area upstairs in the club where there's private bathrooms. I was like, okay, cool. I walked up the stairs with her and she led me into like a little, you could see it's rooms because there were doors, maybe 4 or 5 of them. And she picked out a door and we went in. So the setup of those little cubicles is that there was a couch, a leather couch in the center of the room. There was a little bar area in the corner and there was a bathroom. Went into the bathroom, peed. As I'm sitting there, I'm like, I'm so nauseous. And I tell this lady, and she says, oh no, it's alcohol, but I can get you something, you're going to be okay. She comes back with 2 pills. She gives it, and you know, when you're drunk, you don't think, you know, like, things like both spiking and the date rape drug was not a big thing. We didn't know about it. Like, it just didn't exist in our heads.
And you were young. It was your first time in that type of an environment.
Exactly.
Right?
So I just was not even sure because I thought that she was going to give me like a grandpa or a Dispring or something like that. Because I said, I have a headache. I feel nauseous. Can you help me? And also because you don't want to embarrass your friends or early before the so you're trying to find a solution to this thing quickly. She comes back, gives me the 2 pills, gives me a bottle of water and a small can of Coke. They used to have those, they were the 50 mils, they were the tiny ones.
Yeah.
Gives me that and says, drink quickly. I drink and she says, sit down on the couch, give it about 10 minutes, utabole. I'm like, okay, cool. I drink, I sit down, and I just feel like the room is going in circles. And I tell her, I'm like, I can't feel my legs. Is that even possible?
Normal.
Yeah, like, is it? And she's like, no, it's the alcohol, tabashab. And at that time, maybe I had like 3 or 4, what do you call it? Glasses of alcohol. So it would be like 6 shots, right? Mixed with water or Coke. So I don't think I would have been that drunk, really, at that time. But the pill just made me very woozy. I felt numb. I couldn't feel my legs. And then as I'm speaking to her, 2 men come in. And she sort of looks at them and then they exchange pleasantries. And you can see they're quite familiar with each other. And they speak for a little while. And the 2 gentlemen, they had 2 glasses, most probably a whiskey or something. And they were speaking to her and drinking at the same time. And I was looking at them, I'm like, phew. For some reason, they even look bigger than what they probably are. You know, they look taller, they look heavier. And you could see that there was some kind of trade happening in their conversation, just by the way she was looking at me and how they were responding to her. She left, the guys remained. I could hear the keys turn in the door, and I could tell that she's locking the door. And I was like, oh my God, I need to tell these guys that I need to leave. Most probably they're here because this is their cubicle. I was just here for the bathroom, so most probably I need to exit. But I quickly also realized that they are approaching me in a way that almost infers that I'm there for them. And I said, sorry, Papa, ke kopa o nthusa go emela, I want to go, you know? And the guy said to me in response, and I remember this so clearly, he said, no, we're going to teach you how to be a woman, but we work as a sort, you know? And I'm like puzzled. And he says, o tlo ba sharp, but re tlo ruta gore mosadi ke ntho e jwang, you know? And I just felt numb. I couldn't move. I was sitting on this couch, almost gripping the couch with my hands. And they came at me. The one guy removed his belt.
Oh.
Yep. Well, the one guy removed his belt, and I knew I was in trouble. I was literally shaking in my core, but my body couldn't allow me to move from the seat. They undressed me, pulled me off the couch, threw me on the floor. Yeah, threw me on the, it was a carpet floor, threw me on the floor, and just proceeded to rape me. And I remember trying to scream, man. Like, I didn't, I don't know, but I just felt like I was screaming so much that my throat felt like it was breaking. You know when you're choking on your own saliva. And I bit my tongue to a point where I had a cut in my tongue from screaming and crying. And I remember this guy just knocking my head on the carpet to say, "Ako thule. You were here for a reason, and this is the reason." I was on the ground. Now I'm naked. They have stripped me naked. The little church dress I was wearing is torn. And they're raping me for hours on end. This lady comes back again, opens the door. I'm on the floor, lying on my stomach. And I sort of turn and I see her at an angle. And she's talking to 3 other men. And they spoke. They came in. And it was a jaw. 5 men raped me that night. I remember towards the end, I had a dislocated shoulder. I had bitten my tongue. I had burst my eardrum. And I couldn't move at all. There was just blood everywhere. I dragged myself from where I was to the door, and the lady was standing at the door. This is most probably three hours later. The lady was at the door. This is now approaching right after midnight now. So this most probably happened around 10. This is now after midnight. And I'm naked. My dress is torn. I am bloody. I'm on the floor. She then says to me, "Oh, this is how much you're worth." And I'm like, I think I was so out of it that the alcohol was not even a thing for me. It was just the brokenness of my body at that time that I was trying to sort of understand. Can I walk? Can I speak? And I remember just my mouth being so swollen, I couldn't say much. She threw a 50 rand note on my body. And the guys walked out with her as if nothing happened. They dressed, they left. I dragged myself towards the staircase. And luckily my friends were still in the club looking for me because they saw me go up. And I think at the time they prevented them to come up, to come look for me up. So they were still at this staircase screaming and shouting, asking for access to say, "No, we saw her go up there. She's still up there." Like, you know? And as I am dragging myself down the stairs, they see me. and I'm butt naked, leading into the club. And I just remember them screaming and screaming and screaming. Took me, put me on their shoulder. The one guy I was with, there was like 3 of our friends. So the gentleman that we were with, he took his jacket and covered my body because my dress was in tatters. He covered my body, got into a meter taxi, and we went back to the flat. For about 2 weeks straight, I couldn't do a damn thing. And I remember missing out the first week of school because our recess was done. And I couldn't tell anybody what had happened while we were in Bloemfontein. I kept quiet. But the faces of the men I remembered so well. Because at that time, there were ANC campaigns in Free State. So it was like municipality campaigns. So there were boards of faces of people to vote for. Like there were boards everywhere. And I remember walking, so this is now after school, I was going to an ATM and I saw this board in the street. And I said, oh my God, that is the guy who raped me. I see his face. That is the guy who raped me. And
Thank you.
I stood for a moment.
Thank you.
And I looked at this board. And back then I had a 3310, so you couldn't really take a picture.
Yeah, I remember 3310.
Yeah, I had a Nokia 3310, so you couldn't really take a picture of the image and save it. But I knew him. I could see his face. I went back to school and I told the friend that I was with that I saw the guy's face. And he said, okay, fine, we can report it. I remember going to police station Yako Tabanchu to go report it.
So did you report it 2 weeks later or a week later?
It was about 3 weeks later.
Okay.
Went to the police station, told them the story. They told me, sit in this room, we'll be back. We sat in that room for like an hour or 2. And this police officer came back and said, you can't report the case here. They said, no, Iyako Bloemfontein. Took another taxi from Tabanchu, Rako Blom. Got there, Central Police Station, report the case. Sat for another 30 minutes, an hour. Came back, the police officer, and said, do you know who you're reporting the case against? I'm like, Kimoboniko posting, I don't know his name, but I know his face. And he says, poster effing. And then I explained the poster. And he said, okay, can you get in the police van and we're going to drive around Motoropong, and if you see a poster with that face, I'm like, yeah, I can. We drove around different boards and I pointed it out. And he said, no, can't be. Like, we will not do it. I am so sorry. It can't happen here. Went back to the police station, had a full interrogation of the whole thing. 2-3 cops came in, interrogated us for hours, and they said, no, can't be, we're not going to do it. I left.
They're not going to open the case?
They're not going to open the case. Absolutely not. And I remember just keeping quiet, knowing very well that I'm in trouble. And it was taking a lot of my school time because we were going to write the matric exams, you know. And I'm like, I can't be back and forth, go blow, because and I'm a student, I don't have money to go back and forth. But also thinking about my mom. How am I going to tell my mom the story? When I was supposed to be go skolong ke bala, ke fihlile jwang ko ditlabong, ke fihlile jwang maponiseng. Like, it's a whole big story that I literally don't have physical evidence for. And I knew my dad is so strict. My dad was going to beat my mom and me up for my indiscretions. Because we were already living in a home where abuse was a norm. And I just thought about my mom, and I'm like, if I ever tell my dad, he will beat my mom to a pulp. And I had seen it many, many times. Because he was going to blame her for my behavior. And how do I explain to my parents that I'm having sex with men that I don't know? Like, to them, it's not even rape. It's, I went there, I had sex with them. So to my black mom, who is not even exposed to clubs and all of that, explaining that to her would be horrific. And I remember just going through the emotions of rejection, embarrassment, my body not healing because I had the dislocated shoulder. My tongue was still not healing well. I couldn't speak. It even felt or seemed like I had I don't know what they call it, man. You know how you can't really speak or something like that because my tongue was not healing. And I tried very hard to hide it. I really, really tried. But also the shame of the physical violence, what it brings on you. And I think what also damaged my mind at the time is what the police told me. How they handled the whole thing. The interrogation, when they were asking me questions like, did I enjoy sex? Was this the first time I had sex? Did I use protection? I mean, like I was getting
They
raped.
asked you such questions.
Yeah, said,
These are the cops.
Yeah, these are the cops. They asked me, did I use protection? Can I show Hore? The weird thing the police officer said, maybe let's hope you get pregnant, then you have a DNA sample of the child that will prove that this guy is your rapist. And I'm like, what if I don't get pregnant? And what if I do? Do I even want the pregnancy? Like, do you understand what you're saying to me? You're saying I should wait for a pregnancy to prove a rape. That's what you're saying. And I remember just being unable to understand it at all. Just not understanding. Went back home after matric exams. And I couldn't stand the sight of my father. Because to me, he resembled all these other men. In his ruthless tone, the way he abused all of us, and his disregard for anybody else in the house. So in his voice and in his mannerism, I identified my rapist through him.
That is painful.
Yeah. Because and every time I hear him scream, I would hear myself scream from the rape. You know? His scent like made me nauseous. Imagine having your father in the house and his scent reminds you of a rape. Because he was the only man that was close to me. And was the only man I was hearing consistently. And with every beating, I felt like it was part of the rape. With every cursing, felt like it was still part of it. And I ran away from home. I left home, and I just couldn't stand the presence of a male near me, near my mom, anything. Because I felt like the more I stayed at home, the more violence I saw. And I couldn't understand why also my mom didn't leave. Because I kept on asking her, why does because that was like my consistent thing. I couldn't really say because my dad is beating you. I couldn't say that because obviously in my family the hierarchy of a man is more important than truth. It's your father is the leader, he's the anchor, he's literally the stirrer, the wheel of this family. In no time or place will you ever say you feel uncomfortable in his presence. So the only way I could almost communicate what I was feeling towards my dad was to ask my mom, what is a hotel? And she kept on saying, no, your schools, your what, everything that you do is here, your friends are here, your dad is working here. And he's starting, at that time he was also going to transition from military to mining. He was going into mining. And he was studying at Vids, and he would do these late nights, and he would come back tired and very angry for some reason if he didn't pass an exam, and detested mining and stuff. So it was really hard. So it was really hard for him to also transition from mining, from military to mining, because he was like, okay, I'm getting too old, I need to leave. So he went into mining. But even his transition made it hard for us to accept that he's going to be in the house all the time, because he had to start from scratch again. And I think for him that was very hard to accept. And things were not as they were with the access that we had from the military. Now, mining doesn't give us access to anything in terms of security, housing, and all of that. So we had to move, back room, from back room to rooms. And I think that just weighed hard on him. And I'm not trying to condone his behavior. I'm just trying to look at it from what was really happening at the time that caused the rift in the family behavior and the family dynamics. So I then decided, okay, I don't want to see my mom get beat up every weekend for cooking the wrong thing, for dressing indifferently, for going to church and coming back an hour later. Like, we look at society, then Pula Yana, and then she was late and she gets a beating for that. So I was just tired of seeing that and hearing it and also experiencing it, because he would move from beating up my mom and then beating us up as well. So I almost rebelled against the system that was at home, and I left. And also, one of the reasons why I also decided to leave was that my dad wanted me to go into geology, and I felt like I'm not good at it. I have no interest in it. I don't want to be studying rocks. It's not my thing, And I kept on saying I want to go into the arts and communications and advertising. And he was like, no, not in my house. It's either you go into law, geology, engineering, town planning, or something like that. But you're definitely not going to the arts. So I just felt like, oh, well, you have really said a lot of things in many, many ways to tell me that I must just fuck off anyway. So I could leave. And I left. Moved in with a friend. So in boarding school, I had a friend who moved to Johannesburg to come study, I think it was linguistics, COVID. So nobody local brown. So I'm like, I'm going to catch a train. Back then, taxis were a little bit expensive. So taking a train was cheaper. Take a train from Randfontein Park Station, you walk to Braamfontein. Then I stayed with her. And I think that change in environment messed me up a lot, because we underestimate how big Johannesburg is and how cruel it is when you don't know who you are. You get in here thinking, I'm going to make it, I'll hustle my way through life, it's going to be okay, I'm smart, I was a straight A, B student, I think I'm smart. And then you get here and you realize that this is a jungle more than anything else. People are nice, they're welcoming, but it's each to their own, You have to hustle for yourself. And I remember starting off, the first job I got was promotions for Coca-Cola. So Coca-Cola was preparing for the World Cup, and they needed Simba.
Yeah.
They needed the girls who would walk around the Simba, but already balloony.
Yeah, so this is 2010.
Yes.
Actually, that's how a lot of young girls start in Johannesburg.
Yeah.
Like those types of jobs, like being a promo girl
Yeah.
for like alcohol companies, drinks companies,
Yeah.
or Simba chips companies, or
Yeah.
just doing activation.
But obviously, in the first year when I got here, I didn't really get jobs, so it was like just odd things.
Yeah,
But that was
just to pay the bills.
Yeah, but that was the main one that I got that aided me to pay some bills. I did that. It was really fun. They had a little tour bus. We were moving from one township to the next. We were these promo girls who were running around Lisimba. The World Cup happened, done. Then the problem starts. You see Joburg. Yes. Josie. So there's two different kinds of people in Josie, right? There are the people who are hustling, proper hustling, and those who hustle others. Right? So you end up thinking, okay, how on earth am I going to survive here? It's promos, then moved on to working there was a club at the time it was called Icon.
I remember Icon.
Yeah. Icon was just starting out. They needed, got in touch with a guy called Chris. Chris said, you can clean tables, offer people drinks, you must know the menu, you must know the alcohol. And we waited there. We waited, we worked, we were cleaning toilets, because you're part of a general worker.
Yeah.
So you move from washing dishes. Once that job is done, if the hours still permit, you've got 2-3 hours left in your job, you then ask, someone clean the bathroom, Zamo clean the couch, zamo vacuum I feel like so that when the club opens in the evening, everything is set again. I was doing that. I did that for a while actually. Then went on to work at Macro Polo. There was a bingo center in Sandton City. I went on to work there, and then because it was also close to Icon at the time, so you would walk from Friedman, Uyako Bingo, which is Sandton City. And then I was like, oh, I can actually do two jobs at once. So I would work during the week because the clubs would close Monday to Wednesday, reopen on Thursday, right? So I would be, okay, Monday to Wednesday I would work at Bingo, at the Macro Polo Bingo Center. And then I would go work at the club. So that's how I started hustling. Then with that money, I took myself to school to study marketing at Demlin. There was a Demlin in Braamfontein.
Braamfontein, yeah.
Yes.
It's still there, no?
I think it's still there.
Yeah.
Did a marketing and sales course there, and then things went left.
What happened?
A friend of mine who had been in Joburg for a while introduced me to like a guy. You know these guys, guys who don't look the age.
They look older or they look younger?
They look younger, but he was older. I think age difference was around 20 years age difference. And so the friend says, my boyfriend works at Absa Private Bank. He's a banker, but he has connections with some people, some of his clients, and they're having a dinner at Bryanston Country Club. And I'm like, what's Uncle Bryanston Country Club? And it's like, no, you'll see. I'm going to introduce you to people. I'm going to have a great time. I'm going to have dinner with my boyfriend and his friends. And then that's where the mess started. Got introduced to what now they call a blesser, but he was more of a sugar daddy. And I would like to clarify this. It was one human being, it was not multiple. Because there's this thing, I dated many, many men. I didn't. There was one person, which is the person I wrote about. That's why I had to also protect his name, because he's got a family and kids and businesses and political connections and many other things that are very dodgy. But anyway. But the friend introduced me to this guy, and we started a relationship. For me, when I think about it at the time, and I think about my background and my culture, ke Mosotho, polygamy is not a thing in our culture. We get married off fairly young, 14, 15 people get married off. Marrying an older man is not a culture shock for me, because my dad was way older than my mom. My grandfather was way older than my grandmother. My aunts are married to people who are 15, 20 years older than them, and they had never made it a big deal. So I didn't see it as a big deal. So it was like, oh, okay, I met a man who likes me. I like him. And at that time, thank God, he was not reminding me of my trauma. He was not gaslighting me. He was not treating me like a subordinate at the time. Or he was not embarrassing me. He was just kind. And I was like, oh, okay, it's just another guy. Unfortunately, he had a lot of money, so they put labels on him to say, oh, he's a sugar daddy because he's got money. I'm like, how many people date people with money and then end up marrying them? Are you still going to say they were in a sugar daddy relationship? You know, by virtue of you having money, does that change the title or the way the relationship is perceived? Yes, now the notion and the phenomena is different, whereas people have multiple people that provide for different service needs. So, omungwa petroli, omungwa rente, omungwa koloi, omungwa school fees. That is more a blessee culture phenomena. It was not like a sugar daddy relationship. And I think that's where they differ, because you date someone, and for the life of me, God blesses them and they have money and they're slightly older than you, whether it be 10 years or even 15 years, would you be considered dating a sugar daddy? You understand what I'm saying? So if somebody would now approach me now and he is not wealthy, and a year later he becomes wealthy, is he a sugar daddy? No. But unfortunately then at the time everything was labeled, and it continues to be. So he was labeled as a sugar daddy. I was okay with it. I really didn't know what it meant. I didn't care much. I knew I was in a relationship with a genuine person. It was a genuine relationship. But obviously towards the middle of the relationship, the power dynamics start playing out. It's, you don't have money, I'm the one with the money. You will dress a certain way. You will eat in certain places. I mean, he moved me from living in Braamfontein to go stay in Morningside. And also that is a huge shift when you have not worked for it, because you don't understand the power dynamics, that you moving from Braamfontein to Morningside, it's a way for him to control your life and ostracize you from your immediate security, which is your friends, maybe access to family, or even access to career things, career choices or opportunities, because now you're living in his house, he's telling you what to do. An apartment. He's
living in one of his houses.
Yes, one of his houses. He's telling you what to do. He has now hired a driver for you. You are unable to go to places where you would go. Like we used to love going to Maboneng. We used to enjoy going to Fruit Lovers Market. Now, because he's in the picture and he has created this system or this thing, I can't go to those places anymore. I can't be with my friends. I can't call people. They can't call me. So he's blocking me from having access to what I know. Now changing the way I think, changing the way I speak as well, because now you're taught how to speak politically correct, because now you're part of his friends. When you go sit with his friends having dinner.
Ow. Yes. Because usually guys would either sleep with you and disappear. But the fact that
no, he did. It's just that the way, I was now being
so
taught.
No side chick,
yeah.
Was he married at the time?
Yes, he was.
Oh, okay.
Yes, he was.
And you were not aware?
I was not aware the first year. I found out the second year. Because now, when you're living separately, you don't see a lot of things, right? Now you move into an apartment. Now you start hearing the phone calls from the wife. You start seeing that, oh, actually, his screensaver has his children. He has 2 children. You start seeing those things. When you're living away, you don't see it because, bona once a week, once a month, so you don't really see. But once I moved to Morningside, then I was made aware that, oh, there's a bigger life than what I was shown the first year. And then obviously when you're already in the relationship, you make the decision to stay because there's really no reason to leave. You're going to leave because, and then what? Like, it just didn't make sense that, okay, you're already in a relationship. Are you going to dump him because he has a wife? And I understand what my message means now, but then the reality was you're already in a relationship. What would change if you continue? Tomorrow will still look the same, whether you leave or not. So I continued with the relationship and unfortunately fell pregnant. He hired a nurse, a private nurse, to come extract the baby out of my body. Yeah. That's when I knew that enslavement comes in different ways and forms. It's the money, controlling of excess of money. It's controlling excess of freedom. What time you're going, what time you're coming back, where can you go, where you cannot go. Freedom of movement, I didn't have that. And then going as far as tracking my movements, meaning installing tracking devices in my phone to download conversations, to download WhatsApp messages. He could intercept all of that and then come back and say, oh, but why who called you at this time? And then you don't see it as it's happening. You're like, oh, maybe he's just trying to protect me. Yes, we are in love. He just wants to know if I'm fine. I mean, he's a business person, so he's protecting his business interests. He wants to know who's in my life so that it doesn't damage his reputation or whatever. But essentially, he was enslaving me to his idea of a relationship, what he deems a relationship should be, and what he will condone and what he won't condone in my own life. So when I found out that I was pregnant, I told him immediately, and then within 3 days the baby was gone. I didn't even think about things like consenting to remove the baby. I had not even thought about what being pregnant at the time meant for our relationship and our circumstance. I was not even sure if I personally wanted a baby. It was like, oh shit, this has just happened. I'm going to tell you about it. We'll talk about it and make a decision and see what happens. I was not even given the time or day to even think about it. Within 2 days, the baby was gone. He hired a private nurse. The nurse took out the baby, and then that was it. And I realized then it's time to leave. I also realized that in that time he was connected to a lot of political people who knew my rapist, and I had told him about the rape, and he was having private conversations with political leaders to conceal this rape so that I never speak about it. And at that time I knew my life was in danger, and I literally fled Morningside, called my uncle who was still in the army to get me out of Johannesburg, take me back to Lesotho to stay with my grandmother for about 3 months. I only came back later that year, came back to Braamfontein again, because obviously I can't go back home. My dad has completely said, he had said that when I left, if you decide to leave, don't ever come back. So I knew that I don't have access to come back home. So I never went back home. Came back to Johannesburg, hustled my way through life again. Going back to doing promotions, I took myself to school. I worked for different companies as a receptionist, moved on to doing telecommunications, the call center, moved on, did promos. And at that time I was studying at the same time with UNISA. And then I went on to work with you, actually. I worked with you from 2015, but that was also through connections from social events and the events that I would do for charities. And and then
I was very not only inspired by you, but for me it was the first time seeing a woman do the things that we were doing. In Bella with Mlothswa, we're going into the streets.
Yeah.
We're selling in the streets, and it was hardcore work.
Yeah.
For me, even some guys won't even do that type of work.
Yeah.
But I was so impressed that you were willing to even go all out and hustle in the streets. For me, it told me something about you and just the type of future you're going to have, because you're a flippin' hard worker.
Yeah, so I remember, man, I used to wake up early to do promotions and go from province to province. I mean, there was a time we were in Limpopo, Raya Kurumani. We went to Cape Town, Kokailisha, just doing promotions. And at that time, to tell you the truth, and you know this, there was no income that we were getting. For about 2-3 years, there was no income. And we did the job. We would do those, get a little money, petrol, and we would go from one place to the next place. Also at the same time, trying to sustain yourself. Madulo, where you're going to live, what you're going to eat. And then, I don't know, when God is moving in your life, he really moves. Because, I mean, from doing promotions for Morfire, I went on to be the brand manager for the brand, working to make sure that the brand is presented correctly. Moved on, did radio with you, breakfast show, beautiful. When we started, it was a massive Metro, right?
Yeah, I think we were at Times Media.
Media.
This was before Massive Metro was born.
Yeah, so worked Times Media, doing different things, script writing, producing radio shows, and I was doing all of these things at the same time.
You're learning so much.
Yeah, for sure.
This was even before your first book.
It was before. It was before. Work behind the scenes in radio. Same time, I'm still doing more fire. It was great. I was learning so much, and I then decided, I was like, okay, cool. With the knowledge that I have from script writing, I could really tell my own story. And it was in those moments where I would have a day by myself and I would read, as opposed to going to a club or drinking or whatever. I'm not even a huge social person, so I would sit and write what I see, what I feel, what I think, what I've experienced, what's going on with my friends, what are they experiencing, reading articles, reading books. I'm a huge book lover. I would go exclusive books, being unable to even afford some of the books, and I'll read those books, sit there for 2-3 hours, to a point where the managers are like, can we give you water? You've been here for 2-3 hours. You know, you're hungry, but you're like, I would rather sit here and read this book than go back home and not have food. And I would do that. I did that for a long, long time. And I would read those books and write, and you take my laptop everywhere and write. And throughout the years, I have sort of managed to stay away from things that almost deter my calling. You know, started working with different shelters in Johannesburg, using my story as part of my activism, you know, using the work that I have learned through with different institutions. The UN, we went to the UN summit, we learned a lot of things there. We worked with shelters in Nigeria and Kenya. I did a lot of work for BBC. I was doing corresponding work for victims of gender-based violence with BBC. Went to Kenya to do documentaries. So over the years, I have learned to use my story, my background, what I know, to create almost a movement of awareness. Show young people how hard it is. Nothing comes easy. Nothing for me ever. Nothing was ever handed to me. Ever. There was never a time where I got a phone call and they said, here's a job for you. Or, hey, come do this for this, we'll pay you so much. I always had to work before I got paid. And that would be months and months or even years and years of work before payment came for something that I did 2 years ago. And I'm grateful for that, because it taught me how to be truthful to the work, because I know I'm doing it for a reason. It was never, I'm doing this type of work for money. It was never that. It was, do I believe in it? Do I see myself in it? Can people learn from it? And what can I teach myself about myself in that time? Am I resilient enough? Am I honest enough? Am I level-headed enough to say, when my friends are going out, to say, no, I'd rather spend my time reading and studying, watching documentaries, researching. That's what I've been doing for the last 5 years. Researching, reading, studying, writing. And the work proves the result is there.
Congratulations.
The result is there.
What an amazing story.
So the result is there. You know, everything that I have required material-wise is from that. You know, bought my first car by myself through that. Gave back every single thing that the man that I was dating gave me. I gave him all of that back to make sure that I buy my first car, which is the car that was branded More Fire. Remember, it was the black Audi A1. It was an old version, right? I think there was a 2006 version of an Audi branded More Fire. Went on to buy other things and other things and other things from the work that I do. So when I see young people now make a mockery of the freedom that we have and the access that we have by just saying things are easy, it's a mockery, you know, because you're like, what is the lifespan of this thing that you're doing? Do you know the dangers of it? Do you know how many people have died in this process? People who are stuck on drugs. And I thank God that I never ventured into things like drugs, because at the time when we had access to money, that was an easy thing to get, because everybody wants to be on a high, you know? And I don't know, but I do believe in God so much. I think it also comes from understanding forgiveness. That's why I made a conscious decision to forgive my dad, forgive my mom for the little knowledge she had at the time to protect us, forgive her for not having access, to forgive my dad for not understanding the ripple effects of apartheid and being in the army. That thing destroys a lot of men. Them not understanding what love is, how to protect their children in modern day society. They don't know that. Those people were trained to protect this country by all means necessary. They were not trained to love and nurture. So, which is something that we need in our generation, the love and nurture. That's why we go seeking it out from everybody else, because we don't have that. Our parents suffered so much that even when I look at my dad now, I feel like, man, I wish I was your mom at some point, because I want to give you the love that you didn't have, because all you knew was to protect this country. And nobody rehabilitated you after that. After 1994, they left him. Nobody rehabilitated him. No counseling was offered to those soldiers. No therapy of any kind, whether emotional, mental, not even health-wise. You know, I saw, just by looking at him, that my dad suffers from post-traumatic stress. You know, builds up of depression over time, trying to adjust to a system in a country that he was just only trained to protect but not live in. You know, I can see sometimes when dogs run after us when we go jog together, and I look at him, he fears dogs. You see it in him, that just hearing a dog bark shakes him, because that thing is still in his head. You know, just driving sometimes into suburbs and he sees white people, you can see the loath in his eyes, but he still feels the hurt. He still sees his brothers that were killed in the system. He still remembers his passing of his dad. He still remembers all the other associates and his colleagues that died in his period. He still sees that in white people. How was he supposed to love us and treat us while he was experiencing all of that? And then now we say, oh, men are trash. No, men are not trash. The system that was built to give us this man is trash. Because when I think about the type of man I want, I would say some of the qualities that my dad has must be in that man as well. My dad is resilient. My dad is a fighter. My dad is a man who educated himself throughout the struggle. He came from zero, nothing. And he built this home for us, and he built this country for us. That's why sometimes when I walk, whether Kikokasi or in the suburb, I own each and every step, because I deserve it, because of what my parents did, and many other parents, you know. Your parents, our parents, the next person's parents. We deserve the space. We deserve the opportunities that come with this freedom. So when I look at young people now, and I'm like, wow, when I was 19, I was just like you. I wish I had a Jackie who would tell me and guide me on how to behave, how to treat myself, how to respect myself, how to value education. I only now have the opportunity to take education seriously, after having to suffer for it, as if my parents had not suffered enough. And obviously those were my personal choices, and I take full accountability for those choices. But with that being said, how have I changed my life to make sure that my life is not just a life? I give back. I talk to people. I am honest about my story. I share the knowledge that I have in books and writings and podcasts and interviews, or every little space that I can get. I am so comfortable and just talk to Majita. I'm very comfortable with that, because I know what it means to impart knowledge and information. Information should be free. You should not be oppressed to have the knowledge and the wisdom that our parents had just because you don't have the opportunities. We should be in a position to say, this is what I know, this is what I've experienced, and this is what I want you to know, so that you can live better.
You've got an amazingly inspiring and an incredible story. The last time I spoke to you, I think you were still on book number 4.
Yes.
Or maybe 3 or 4. The fact that you've got 9 books now, I am so inspired. I'm actually even inspired to go back and write as well.
Please do.
Because I'm only still on book number 3. You're now on book number 9. How amazing is that? Now maybe for people who have never been familiar with your work, let's maybe summarize, what are your books about?
So
starting from the first one.
So the Blesses Game, right? Which is this book, the
bottom
first
one,
one,
yeah?
the bottom one.
Yeah.
That deals with my personal life story, right? Then the Hockey Club is a mixture of different people's stories, including mine towards the end of the relationship that I had with the gentleman, because it speaks about the life around Sandton and how Sandton people live like, you know, I speak about the cults that are here. We know the most famous sangomas who give young people things to take men away from their partners. Now it's a thing, what people do to acquire wealth, and I'm not saying it's all black people, you know how social media people are, what they do to acquire wealth, and also the human trafficking that comes with the deportation of young women in this country. Human trafficking and kidnapping is huge. And it happens right in front of us, and it's like people act like it's not there. I speak about how people use sexual entertainment to enslave people. It's so easy to say, no, I slept with that guy for money and he gave me a Gucci bag. But what does that do for you psychologically over time? The behavior, what does it change in the DNA of humans right now, young people? You're creating these broken people over and over again. You're normalizing rape culture because people gave you a bag, somebody gave you a bag, they raped you and gave you a bag, and you're like, oh, okay, at least I got a cell phone. At least I got this. But you were molested and raped over time just because of your social standing. And it's used as entertainment now to say, oh, we'll just bring these girls in and it will be a party and we'll have orgies and then we'll rape them and date and give them drugs and it's fine. But what are we saying? What does that really mean? And then you look at how young people don't care about education anymore. And it's not all of them, but the majority of them and what they portray on social media. It's very rare to even see a young person posting, yo, I'm studying for an exam. They would rather post champagne, they would rather post the all-white parties and all of that. You see young women who starting movements and going into doing foundations and doing that. They're not popular. The girls who are studying, who are acquiring skills and going into corporate and changing things in different industries, they're not popular on social media. The influencers are popular. But what are they influencing? And who are they influencing? So you look at the different books because it's a series. Each and every book has its own message and in its own tone. But then also you've got a book like Liwa that deals with psychosis, the breeding of modern female serial killers. It's so easy for women to breed children and then poison them, give them rat poison because but you're breeding serial killers. Why don't we see that? Because you see all these stories where women kill their children and we're like, oh, now they're depressed. No, you're breeding a serial killer because they start off by killing one child and then they mask it off as no unakula. But no, if you look at it from a medical point of view, that child was poisoned over time because the female was rejected by the male. The male didn't want to marry her. The promise of marriage was taken away, so the revenge was on the children because now they're becoming a financial burden on her. So she starts poisoning them over time. And then we don't see it because our communities, doctors, going to the clinic and the access to all these medical reports, they're not there. But we're breeding women who are very, very dangerous. Because yes, poverty, yes, social standing, yes, economic pressures, yes, we can even mention things like COVID hitting women, there's no jobs, is what. But the mental psyche of young people is very dangerous and very imbalanced, and nobody's speaking about that. You see people committing suicide. What's going on with that? Why is it really happening? And why is it happening so rapidly? And you're like, people are okay. Are they really okay?
How did you get out of depression?
Therapy, God. Two things that have worked for me. I worked with professionals that understood what medication to give me. Then I worked with my spirit to heal it, and that's through God. And I told God that I will not be this person forever. You have to find a way to change me, and you have to find a way to heal me, because I don't want to be a revengeful person or a person who's full of hate. So healing comes from you. And he did, in many, many ways. Something as simple as I never wanted to interact with children because of how my kids were taken away from me. It would pain me when I see a woman pregnant. I would feel like, how dare I still exist if I can't produce? it would pain me when I go to family gatherings and like, when are you gonna have a baby? And I'm like, you don't know what babies mean to me to demand a baby out of me. And through writing, that's when I went to children's books and I said, I'm going to conquer the fear of not having babies.
And that's what I wanted to ask you. What inspired you to
Yeah.
start writing children's books?
It's
So
that
you
fear.
got about 2 now, ne?
There's 3. There's one missing. It's sold out.
Oh, Liwa, oh mama, it's red apples.
Apples.
Dealing with inappropriate gestures.
Gestures.
Oh.
How to teach children to speak out when they are molested. Because we don't say anything. I mean, you have adults now who are saying, I was molested when I was 6 years old. I just didn't know what to say. So this book shows children how it happens and how you should communicate it should it happen. And it's in a very, very subtle, very easy language. I worked with teachers and other editors who helped me make sure that the language for children was appropriate. Because the language that you use in adult books is different to the language that you use with children. And then you've got a book that deals with food disorders. You know, there's a lot of children who suffer from food disorders, but they don't know what it is. Also helping parents to teach children how to eat healthy again. You know, we feed children McDonald's and what all the time. And then we worry, we are then surprised when they have breakdowns, emotional breakdowns, mental breakdowns, obesity. You see children vomiting, you know. But that's when you look at the school system itself, it teaches children to not be themselves because you have to look a certain way to be in a certain sport. It hits on children's self-esteem when you're told you're too fat to play tennis, you're too skinny to play rugby. So we are trying to build children so that the society that they live in is better, make them aware of things, help parents have conversations with them at a young age so that when they grow, they know it's inappropriate to touch a child in a certain way, and the child is able to then communicate that because the book has facilitated the conversation between them and the parent. So that's what I do. But also, I've worked with a lot of charitable people and met a couple of people. And there's a guest that I would love to introduce because of her work and her philanthropic work. She comes from Botswana. She's Miss Botswana, and her name is Palesa. And I think at any moment...
So you
Yeah.
So you are doing some work not only in Mzansi, even in
Yes.
Botswana as well.
I am going to launch my books in Botswana. They're already in bookstores in Botswana, but we're working with different individuals to make sure that we create the same awareness that we have done in South Africa in Botswana. And Palesa is part of the ambassadors that come from Botswana as Miss Botswana to assist us in that transition. So with her work, I think there's a way we can find common grounds in our social activism. Yeah.
That is incredible. I actually would love to sit with her and find out about the work that she's doing. And maybe how does your future look like?
I'm going into criminology. So remember,
Okay.
I'm studying criminology. So career-wise, I'll still be writing, but I'm going to be working with private entities when it comes to cyber technology, cyber crimes. Also, it still goes back to the human trafficking things, but I'm going into criminology as a criminal profiler.
Oh, lovely.
Yeah.
So, just like the likes of Abu Isabel Jones.
Correct, yes.
Abu Gonjabu Banda, Babu Channel ID.
There's a lot.
Yeah,
there's a lot. I watch that all the time.
Yeah, I watch them a lot
remember.
as well.
Remember back in the day, there was the X Files.
Yeah,
That's when
yeah.
I was introduced to that type of work. There was X Files. Then there was things like Dexter, Criminal Minds,
Yeah.
and then you've got the Crime channel that teaches you all these things. So I used to watch all of that. But I think my love also came from that, seeing people in the profession do it, from medical experts, from forensics guys, from the actual detectives that investigate. But I think I'm more on cybercrime than anything else. Yeah.
Maybe before we introduce your guest, your
Yes.
last words to the audiences out there, what would you like to say to younger girls out there?
Oh, but firstly, thank you. Thank you. Because when I needed a brother in this industry, you became that. You saw me through the worst of the worst in many, many occasions. Thank you. Thank you for teaching me that not all men are bad. Thank you for teaching me leadership. Thank you for teaching me how to relate to people again. Because I was scared of people. You taught me how to invest in communities. Because I did a lot of charity work with you. That's why I still continue to do it. Thank you for reminding me that education is important. And when I started at Mofire, you had a lot of people who were extremely educated, like Uputsipiwe Shongwe. He also instilled that education is important.
It's good to see, and congratulations. This is amazing.
It's a lot, eh?
And Bella, you write. Your books are not just like you write.
And the thing is, remember, this is after editing. So it was bigger than this. So the editor was like, Jax, you can't go over 400 pages. You need to come down.
But you know what you must do? You must do your audio version.
Yes.
That's a lot of work.
Oh, it's a lot.
The audience prefers it when it's in your own voice.
Yes, yeah.
Don't ask somebody else to do it for you. Read it in your own voice. In that way, it makes even more of an impact to the audience.
This is the Hustler's Corner.